7 straight Albanian championships, 5 consecutive Albanian Cups, 6 of 7 Super Cups, and we have almost single-handedly taken Albania over 20 spots up the UEFA coefficient charts. But now, in Season 8, it's time to put our money where our mouth is and take this team and this country to the next level. Welcome back, everyone, to the recap of season number 8 of Red Rain. I'm Mr. Cellophane. If you've been enjoying the series so far, please make sure that you hit that like button. I'd also love to hear your comments about what you think we can do to take this team to the next step. I love your feedback, and I appreciate all of your support. Each and every year, we have gotten more and more money from our board, and each and every year, we've kind of ignored that and kept our budget somewhat in line with where we would be as the top team in Albania. This year, we have 375,000 euros to use each week in our wage budget and a transfer budget of 23.25 million. That's a lot of money to spend. We didn't spend it all, but we did spend some. At least on most players. Our first transfer in the summer window was actually a free transfer. We needed some extra bodies because we had some injury issues during the preseason and as we headed into our initial European campaign, which of course we will get to a little bit later. So we brought in Nikola Maletic on a free, 22 years old from Serbia. He did cap 10 times as a U21 international. Great finishing, great first touch. Tremendous amount of technique, can't really get in the air, but a professional personality. We absolutely loved the thought of bringing in a kid with this talent to bolster our striker core. He's also not the only 22-year-old striker that we brought in this window. We also welcomed 3-time South African international Bongani Dlamini into the squad. Again, he just brings tremendous technical abilities, decent off the ball, good composure and anticipation. Sure, he doesn't like the big matches. Sure, he doesn't have the greatest jumping reach in the world at 5'9", but boy, can this man score. And he only cost us 240,000 euros. A little bit more went out to pick up midfielder Vasilisha Timish, 19 years old from Romania. This was one of those players that we initially thought that we were going to be loaning out for the year because we do have a fairly stacked midfield, which made him a little unhappy as the year went on because he just did not get a ton of playing time, but a tremendous amount of potential. Look at that first touch. His mental attributes are all pretty good. Decent amount of pace on him as well. A lot of technique, good passing. His vision is spectacular. He will be, I am sure, a force in the future somewhere in Albania. We wanted a bit more depth and experience at left back, so we turned to the Netherlands and picked up 28-year-old Terrence Douglas for 775,000 euros. A solid all-around player who honestly ended up getting a little bit more playing time this season than we were expecting. Highly consistent, doesn't love the big matches, and I realize how many players I bring in that seem to have that little personality quirk. In anticipation of Nemanja Perisic leaving the club permanently this year, we decided to go big to replace him at defensive midfielder, and we splashed 5.5 million euros, the highest transfer fee that I believe we have paid since the save began, on a 26-year-old Italian named Nicolo Contigliano. He is a lover of big matches, and he is consistent. I think that's what made him so appealing to me. His value has doubled since we purchased him. He's got the pace. He's got the passing ability that we need in the midfield, whether we play a deep-lying playmaker or an anchor. He is very good at both. Anticipation, composure, decision-making, all fantastic. He is also a leader on and off the pitch. I think a good buy. And because I wasn't sold on the acquisition last year of Felix Janssen, we picked up a little bit of extra depth at that position as well. And Nikisha Šurić has come in. He's 22 years old from Croatia, 18 U21 caps, which seems to be quite a bit for our squad. Not the most consistent player, but he does love those big matches, and he is a very solid player where it counts. Not a highly technical player, but very good defensively, great teamwork, positioning, fantastic. and his anticipation and decision-making just exactly what we need. It had better be for 1.5 million euros. Then we went big on the right back side. Juris Schuck was here. I love Juris Schuck, but we didn't really have anybody behind him or around him. Sure, we brought in Imani Jesus last year, but I'm not really sold on him. So we went with a ton of experience, and this was experience for Europe in 32-year-old right back Pedro Pereira, and he is fan-flippin-tastic. He's got the pace, he can cross, he's got decent defensive ability, but standing at 6'1", he mans that back post. He is a very consistent performer as well, professional personality. We needed more of those for our group. Most of our veterans have that dreaded balanced personality, which can go really either way. And we got him fairly cheap at 1.1 million. Even cheaper, though, was 20-year-old Ecuadorian midfielder Luis Rodriguez. We brought him in to challenge Federico Romeo for his position and to replace Branimir Shavir. Oh, yeah, by the way, we sold Branimir Shavir. More on that momentarily. Determined personality, not the most consistent player, but his passing ability is absolutely flippin' fantastic. His decision-making is great. Someone we really needed for that link-up play between the defense and our strike triumvirate, and I think Luis Rodriguez is an excellent addition to Włocławia. In total, we spent 10.5 million euros of our 23.5 million euro transfer budget. Now, most of the players who went out were of the loan variety. We did have some sales, and we had some players leave on a free. I'm just going to highlight the big ones. Sergio Dashi, who I always intended on having as one of my homegrown strikers. He was developing decently, but he just was not making it into the side nearly as often as I would have liked, so we let him go for free. He is now playing for Tirana. With the addition of Terence Douglas, Sana Slue became rather superfluous, so while he is still under contract for us, he is still a fan favorite. The 27-year-old Ivorian is going to spend the season on loan at Osijek. I was sad to see him go. Branimir Shavir was such a fantastic servant for us. Ended up spending most of the first 7 seasons with us here at Włocławia. We ended up picking him up on loan. You may remember in season 1, we brought him in on a free in season 2. We have sold him for 47,000. He did make 27 appearances for us last year. 3 goals, 9 assists, and as I said, an absolutely fantastic servant to the club. The fans still love him, so when the time came to sell him, because he did want to go, he wanted a new challenge, we sold him to a club that is near and dear to my heart, Vukovar 1991 in Croatia. And finally, with all the additions in the midfield, we did have to make some room. So Eklu Shaka Mawuli was that casualty. Spent a couple of years with us, and even though he made 25 appearances last season, his production was down from the year before, and we just knew it was time to move on. Sure, we only made 9,500 euros on the transfer, but all in all, I'm very glad he was a member of the club, but it was time to move on. And I guess I'm pretty sure you know how our season went. I'll go through some of the highlights. We kicked things off with finally expanding our stadium, 20,000 seats, and we would sell out the stadium during the course of the season. After more than 2 full calendar years without tasting defeat in Albania, a goal in the 4th minute of second half stoppage time against Bylis brought our 84-match unbeaten streak to a close on November the 4th as we lost 1-0. However, it would be only one of 2 times in the season that we tasted defeat. We only drew once. We won 33 matches of 36 in the regular season, finished on 100 points with a plus 110 goal difference. Yes, my friends, we were prolific. In fact, despite the 2 losses on the year, we essentially ran roughshod over the league, and that continued in the playoffs as we just continued to pour in the goals. I believe we averaged 2.97 goals per match. We took care of Flamatari in the semifinals by a score of 3-1. before absolutely dominating in the final against Tirana. 3-0 was the final score in this match. They managed just a single shot on goal, and it did not hit the target in the entire match. Vlado Ilic scoring the goal there, and he scored plenty this season. That was Tomic's first goal of the year. It was our final goal of the season as we once again lifted the Albanian Championship trophy, which we would then see an almost identical result just a week later as we played the final of the Albanian Cup against Dinamo City. The only difference is Dinamo City managed 4 shots on goal without hitting the target once, and we picked up our 6th straight Albanian Cup by a final of 3-0. And just in case you were nervous, we did do the treble, winning the Super Cup 3-1 over KF Bylis. We didn't actually do any additional incoming business throughout the rest of the year, but because we had brought players in and not a ton had left, we had a little bit of a bloated squad, some guys that weren't getting a lot of playing time, and frankly, that just needed to move on. And the first of those was Mihailo Spazojevic. He has left the club for $165,000. Sure, he scored double-digit goals every year, but we brought in guys who were going to do the same thing, and they were going to do it with a little bit more style and panache. With the improvements we've made over the last couple of years on our back line, Luka Broderic was finding himself as a 4th choice. Again, another player that absolutely loved being here, and I loved having him. I do miss his presence on the near post on corners, but it looks like Spasic has really filled that role pretty well. So Luka Broderic is off. He is now in Greece at OFI. Probably my biggest bust of a transfer so far was Brazilian midfielder Vladimir. He just could not find himself in the club. We ended up sending him back to Brazil. And then came the move that broke my heart. And you're going to think that I broke a promise, but he kind of forced it. Luca Tosi, after so many years, now at the ripe age of 23, is off to Oostende, a team that seemed to want basically everyone that we had. He was a fan favorite. He was certainly a favorite of mine, but he just was so unhappy. He wanted a new challenge, and we finally had to oblige him. Luca Tosi, thank you so very much for your service to our team and your country. So even though there were some major changes and the flavor of the locker room was definitely different this year, we were not wanting in the production department. 9 players scoring in double digits in all competitions, led by Nikola Milovanovic's 31 goals. But look at Vlado Ilic. 50 appearances in all comps, 29 goals, 21 assists, primarily playing that deep-lying forward role as our central striker. And oh boy, was he good. Mattia Mosconi in rather limited minutes, scoring 22, 21 from Dlamini, who did have some minor injury issues at certain points, and he only wanted to play advanced forward. He wouldn't play poacher, so he only got playing time when that left striker position was available. He still managed to put in 21. We got 14 from Vladimir Spasic from center back, most of those, of course, coming on set pieces. We were absolutely fantastic there this year. Nikola Miletić is unhappy because he only made it into 26 matches. We do have a lot of strikers, as you can see. He still managed to score 11 goals and add 6 assists. Luis Rodriguez, that new midfielder we were talking about, 32 starts, 36 appearances overall, 10 goals and 4 assists. I really would have liked to have seen more assists. Now, Pedro Pereira, however, in the assist department was fantastic. He and Antonio Tomic both had 15 assists apiece. Federico Romeo with 14. Nicolo Cantiliano, not sure if 6 goals and 11 assists is worth the $5.5 million, but I'm very glad that he was here. Terrence Douglas also picked up 4 goals and 9 assists. So you see plenty of playing time for just about everyone on the squad. And now over to Europe, but instead of starting with us, we're going to start with the rest of Albania, see how everybody else did before we get into our news. Dynamo City kicked things off in the Europa Conference League against Israeli side Hapoel Be'er Sheva. They ended up drawing 1-1 in Israel to win 3-2 on aggregate. However, even though they managed a 1-1 draw in Turkey, they fell at home in the third qualifying round 2-1 to Trabzonspor to lose 3-2 on aggregate and get bounced from the competition. Flamatari also kicked things off in the second qualifying round of the Conference League, and after a 3-2 victory on the road, a 2-2 draw would be just enough to edge out Dunstreda on aggregate 5-4. However, they would get no further in the competition than Dynamo City did after dropping a 2-0 decision on the road against IFK Göteborg. A brace by David Benko made things interesting, but a pair of goals from Göteborg in extra time sunk Flamatari in the competition. They are out of Europe after losing 4-2 on aggregate. Now, because of our new coefficient standing this year, KF Bylis is going to start things off in the first qualifying round in the Europa League, where they met up with CFR Cluj and took care of business on the road. And while they only managed a 2-2 draw in the home leg, that would still be enough to win 4-2. Where they would have a seemingly easier time against Limassol in the second qualifying round, taking a pretty decisive 3-1 decision on the road before absolutely dominating the competition in the home leg, a 7-1 aggregate victory to move them to the third qualifying round, where they would meet their toughest opponent of the competition in Turkish side Fenerbahce. They did manage to pull out a 4-3 victory in the home leg of the third qualifying round. But once the competition made its way to Istanbul, Fenerbahce was just too much. 4-0 on the night. Bylis just could not get anything done. They had 2 players sent off, so they ended the match with 9 men. That wasn't going to help. 7-4 on aggregate, and they are into the playoff round of the Europa Conference League, where they would take on another team from Limassol, win both legs, 2-1 at home, 2-0 on the road, for a 4-1 aggregate score to make it into the league phase of the Europa Conference League for the second straight year, where wins over Dynamo Tbilisi, Dynamo Minsk, and Olympiacos would lead them to a very respectable 14th place finish and a spot in the knockout rounds, where they would face off against Alexandria of the Ukraine, and in the first leg, they would manage to get a goal back late, but they fell to a 2-1 decision, a result they would match in reverse in the home leg. However, there would be no further scoring after 120 minutes, and when it came down to penalties, the Ukrainian side was just that little bit stronger, winning 5-4 and denying Bylis a spot in the round of 16. So while it was disappointing they didn't make it to the round of 16, we are seeing year-on-year improvement, and Bylis could very well be our European partner in this endeavor as we look to climb the UEFA coefficient chart. Latvian side Valmiera would be our opponent in the first qualifying round of the Champions League, and yeah, we took care of business. 7-0 at home, 5-1 on the road. A brace for Vlado Ilic, 2 of those 29 goals we were talking about, to easily make it through to the second qualifying round, where things would get a little bit tougher for us as we took on Astana. We held them to a 0-0 draw at their place. We won 2-0 at home to move on to the third qualifying round, 2-0 on aggregate, where we would cruise through the home leg against Slovan Bratislava 4-0. They managed just a single shot on goal, of course, not on target. A score we would repeat in the first half of the away leg, Slovan Bratislava getting a pair of goals in the final 10 minutes of the match as consolation, but we found ourselves once again in the playoff round of the Champions League, where we found ourselves once again taking on FC Copenhagen. I mean, what are the odds we would get the same opponent 3 years in a row? And we ended up getting demolished in the first leg in Copenhagen by a score of 4-0. We just could not get anything done. Even though we matched them on shots with 12 apiece, they dominated possession, and when they scored, they just did not give us the opportunity to come back. But we sure as hell did try. It took us a while, but right before the half, Enes Tojai put one home to bring us back to 4-1 on aggregate. Early in the second half, though, we would turn things on. Ball fed forward, Ilic getting behind the defense, makes it 4-2. Off of the corner, Romeo, Spasic flipping it on to Ilic, 4-3. Another corner, this time from the other side, Spasic taking care of it himself. We are tied at 4. until we hit stoppage time in the first half, and a cross back post to Elias past a diving Peter O'Biden. We lost 4-1 on the night, 4 minutes into 4 minutes of stoppage time, and 5-4 on aggregate to be bounced from the Champions League. But even though it was super disappointing to not complete that comeback, being in the Europa League honestly was the best thing for us. Our first match was going to be on the road against Slovan Bratislava again. Then we were heading back home, taking on Skandisha from North Macedonia, away at Basel, Crvena Zvezda again, Brighton again, but this time at our place, Hajduk Split, Dinamo Kyiv, and wrapping things up on the road in Italy against Juve. And the competition did not get off to the start that I would have hoped, as even though we dominated them massively in the Champions League qualifying rounds, we could not get past Slovan Bratislava in the Europa League and lost our first match 3-2. Nothing that couldn't be cured by a nice friendly rivalry with North Macedonian side Skandisha. We ran them off of the pitch. A hat-trick from Nikola Milivanovic, goals from Luis Rodriguez and Justin Gutierrez playing as our right back in this one. Yeah, that was pretty easy to pick up 3 very well-needed points. A hat-trick from Mattia Mosconi would lead us to a 3-2 victory on the road at Basel. And we once again managed to take care of Crvena Zvezda, keep it a clean sheet with a 2-0 victory at home. Before coughing up late goals from Evan Ferguson and Joe Bellingham in the 86th and 90th minutes to lose at home to Brighton by a score of 2-1. But once again, we would find our way back into the winning column as we headed to Split and took a 4-3 decision off of Hajduk, before stalling out in a very uninspiring 0-0 draw against Dinamo Kyiv, before obtaining the same result in Turin with a 0-0 draw against Juve. We did not hit the target, but this game was so uninspiring, not even a single booking. Since we didn't manage to get more than just a single point in our final 2 matches against Kyiv and Juve, we lost out on the points that we would have needed to qualify straight for the round of 16. We ended up finishing the competition in 13th place, 4 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses, 14 points. It would, though, mean that we would have a fairly favorable draw in the knockout rounds, which put us against League On side Metz. They were in 8th place in the league at that point. And on the road, we absolutely showed them who's boss, as Milivanovic made it 2-0 in the first half. Early in the second frame, great cross by Tomic finds Milivanovic for his second of the match as he headed it home past the keeper. We would add a 4th. Terrible clearance from Gay. Mosconi putting it across. Who's there but Milivanovic, completing the hat trick. 4-0 victory. A draw in the second leg would put us through pretty easily into the round of 16. Which, unfortunately, is where our story is going to end this year in Europe. We did manage to eke out a 1-1 draw at home, but we just couldn't get out of second gear as the series switched over to Rotterdam, losing 3-0 on the night, 4-1 on aggregate, to once again get bounced out of the Europa League in the round of 16. But because both we and Bylis made it into the knockouts of our respective competitions, we ended the year with our best ever European finish. 10.75 points, giving us a total of 31.125. Now, we still need to see how things shake out when they actually announce the rankings. We are going to move up at least into 20th, perhaps into 19th, because that does put us tied on points with Serbia, currently occupying that 19th spot. But we are, for all intents and purposes for next year, a top 20 team in Europe. And just one quick side note before we wrap things up. That title in Albania that we won, it was our 17th overall, which now moves us into a tie for 3rd place all time with Partizani. Tirana still leading the way with 26. I'm sure we're going to get there probably in the next 9 years. So what do you think, folks? Is our European first transfer policy a success so far? Should we continue that in season number 9, 10, and beyond? I mean, you can argue that it actually hindered us in the league because, well, the year before we hadn't lost, and this year we lost twice. But I think, generally speaking, it's pretty successful, and you're going to see us and Bylis competing for European titles before too long. That is my prediction. If you've enjoyed the series so far, if you liked this video, make sure you let me know in the comments. Also, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We're back next week with season number 9. Let's make it even better than this one. Although, you know, that bar just keeps getting raised more and more and more. Thank you very much for all of your support and being here. I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.